So why don't we dive right in? I'll spend most of the time today presenting. If there are questions, either enter them in the chat. I may not see it, but at the end, I will have plenty of time to answer any questions folks have. Okay. So with that being said, I'm sure everyone can see my screen. So we're going to go to the agenda slide. What are you going to get out of this session? Okay, I know it's 45 minutes, but I have an hour that I'm here with all of you. Folks want to stay, past the 45 minutes, but here's what we want to talk about. We want to talk a little bit about how do you craft a standout resume, and doesn't have to be geared for big tech, but we will probably spend a little bit more time on big tech. Okay. Then we'll talk a little bit about the interview process, what things to think about, and stuff like that. A couple of bonuses that wasn't in the description of the class, but I do want to provide some perspective on what I think is like a really good LinkedIn profile to help you get noticed. Then also you'll learn how to get a personalized resume analysis by me. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll have open Q&A. Okay. So with that being said, why don't we jump right in? Let me talk a little bit very quickly. I don't like to talk too much about myself, but just to give you guys some perspective of who I am and why I think I might be a little qualified to kind of talk a little bit about this. So on a personal front, I've been married for over 20 years to my wife, Sheila. She works at Nintendo, so that's why in this blurry image you see a little Pokemon back there. And that's really the reason why we moved to Seattle here. I have two kids, Victor and Elia. These two, this picture is a bit old. They're a bit older now, two teenagers. The bottom are my logos, academically and professionally. So I started my career at Procter & Gamble, spent 10 years there in sales and marketing. Then I went to Google, did that for about 8 years, also in a sales capacity. Then I decided to do a startup, an AI analytics startup, realized it wasn't for me. And then now I'm at Meta, where I currently oversee our North America business for small, medium businesses. Did my undergraduate at Indiana University, Kelley School of Business, and then wrapped up my executive business program at Harvard Business School a few years ago. And throughout my time, like I mentioned, I have seen a lot of different resumes. I've sat on both sides of the table on interviewing, right? So wanted to share lots of the tips and tricks at P&G, at Google, at Meta. They have us go through a lot of training as well on how to interview, how to look for good candidates, et cetera. So I want to share some of those skill sets with all of you too. Okay. So the slides are going to be very, very wordy. It is not my style, but the reason why they're wordy is because I want these to be like workbooks and things that you can refer back to after this class. Okay, so after this class, I will send this out as a PDF to all of you so that you have it. Okay, so it is very wordy. I will kind of read through a lot of it, but again, it is so that you can reference back to it after this class is over. Okay, so the purpose of the resume, right, is it is purely a marketing tool for you to get your foot in the door for an interview. Okay, it is not a life history. Most resumes are only looked at for 7 to 8 seconds. So you have to quickly demonstrate your value and your fit for that particular role. Okay. Also, many roles out there, unless you have like a referral, will have an ATS application process, right? An applicant tracking system. So when you submit it online, before it even gets to a human, 90+% of applications and resumes will get weeded out because of the ATS. What I want to share with you today is how do you ensure that your resume is best suited for the ATS? It doesn't confuse it, right? It's truly capturing all of your experiences and skill sets, okay? But you need to know kind of a little bit of how it works, which I'll talk a little bit about later, okay? So, the basic kind of outline of a resume, I'm sure we all are very familiar with, but let me just kind of walk you through some of these just in case this may be new to some folks. First one, very top of the page, easy, simple, clean contact information. That means besides your name, your email, your potential, address, phone number, and then also I like to put my LinkedIn profile. Okay. A lot of times when we do referrals at Google, at PNG, at Meta, will ask us, hey, does this person have a LinkedIn profile as an optional kind of cell to fill in? So we know that they're looking at it. Okay, so put that in the contact information. Summary and profile, this is really important. Okay, it is probably one of the most important parts of the resume. But at the same time, it is the one that I tend to give a lot of feedback on because this part of it, most people just put only the skill sets and a lot of like high level things. Doesn't really bring themselves out enough, right? You want to be able to have the recruiter read that summary and profile and put your kind of your name, your face to that, and not be like, oh, these other candidates also fit this profile. Okay, so do not make it too generic. I'll talk about this in a moment. When it comes to your work experience, format it in either what they call a STAR format, which is situation, task, action, results, or the CAR format, context, action, and results. At the end of the day, these bullet points need to have a very strong action verb and ideally have something that's quantifiable and measurable. Okay. Size doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you did it for like $5,000 or $5 million as a result. It is this practice, right, that you're able to articulate what was the situation, what did you do, and what came out of it. Okay, because recruiters, hiring managers want to see, are you doing things strategically that's moving the business, and what value did you create and did you actually add to the company. Okay, so focus on impact. I would say I get a question a lot of times of all these different jobs, do I have to tailor my resume to all of them? I would say yes, but at the same time, that does not mean you do everything from scratch. I would say 95% of your resume layout and structure will be the same. It's just the bullet points that you choose to highlight, the keywords you choose to use, those are the ones that you would change depending on the job that you're applying for. Okay. Education, list degrees, relevant kind of coursework, etc. There has been research that shows it's probably beneficial not to include your graduation date because of ageism bias. Okay. Usually on the extremes, either you're too young or you're too old. Okay. If you're kind of in the middle, that doesn't seem to be as much. Okay. So, any questions on this? I'm actually going to share my resume and kind of walk you through these bullet points. Okay. So it kind of comes to life a little bit more. Okay. So, being very like kind of transparent, whatever, right? This is my resume. Okay. First thing you'll notice, it is black and white. You do not see columns, you do not see colors, my picture, right? That is because you do not want to confuse the ATS. The ATS is relatively, I would say, like archaic, right? In the fact that it likes lines and rows. It does not like columns. It does not care for your face, right? Or your pictures or your colors. It just wants black and white text. Okay. So this is a very boring resume, okay, which is perfect for the ATS. If you want to create a pretty beautiful resume that you want to hand to the interviewer when you're on, kind of like the final rounds, totally okay, right? I would highly advise not to submit those through the ATS because it can cause some confusion. Okay. Um, cool. So let me walk you through. So another thing that I forgot to mention is you might notice I only have 2 pages. Okay. Some people are like, wow, you have 2 pages. Shouldn't it be 1 page? If you have less than 10 years of experience, 1 page is ideal. If you have more than 10 years of experience, work experience, 2-page max. Do not go to 3 pages or 4 pages. Okay, 2 pages max. Okay, so let me walk you through a couple of the key components of my resume and some of the principles that I mentioned before. Okay, so the very top, as you can see, very, very simple, right? My name, my phone number, email, LinkedIn, URL. Okay, very easy. Summary of kind of like the profile section. Okay, this essentially, and I can't stress this enough, it is the TLDR of your entire resume. Okay, when you read this, I've called out the companies that I've worked for, right? The things that I've done, right? Things I do kind of outside of work as well, right? So that when people read this, they can be like, ah, yes, I remember Albert talking about this. This is Albert Chan. Very different than me just listing skill sets. Okay. So that's key. Okay. Even after I teach this class to students and then I meet with them afterwards, they still don't do it. Okay, so I just want to overemphasize, you should probably spend a lot of time here because out of the 7 seconds, most of it is probably going to be spent on this section, like reading a lot of it. Okay. If you look at each of the bullet points, I have 3 to 4 bullet points for the most part. Okay, no more than 3 or 4 bullet points per kind of job that you're working on or role that you've worked on. Okay, any more than that just starts to get like super repetitive and people don't read it. Okay, make use of every single like centimeter and inch. Right. Therefore, if you want people to read and get a high level, 3 to 4 bullet points is good enough. Okay. Focusing on impact. Okay, so again, very strong action verbs. One thing that you don't want to do is actually repeat that same action verb, led, right? Strategy, right? Strategize, right? And keep using that over and over again. So one thing you can do is a little trick is like kind of a control F, find and document, right? Type in your action verbs, no more than 3. Okay. So try to do that, right? If it's like lead on some of them, maybe it's initiated, right, or started on others, right? So that it feels fresh, excuse me, and that you're not just repeating the same action verbs over and over again, okay, for the reader slash recruiter slash hiring manager, okay. Um, I tailored my resume towards sales roles because I tend to focus more on sales roles these days, right? When I was younger, it was kind of more of like a general list, right? But now I'm focusing much more on like sales, CRO type of roles. Education, as you can see, I've listed like, where I went to school, my degrees, but I did not list out the years I graduated. Recognition, and sometimes I see skill sets and certifications, those are optional, okay? If you are doing, I would say, more on the commercial side of things, right? So finance, marketing, sales, right, et cetera. If you're going for like engineer, technical roles, right, then the technical certifications, et cetera, start to become more and more important, okay? A lot of time people put skill sets here, okay? I don't think it's that valuable, right? I tend to I don't even really read the skill set section when people add it, right? My suggestion to folks is actually put those skill sets back into your work experience, okay? Because that's where it starts to come to life a little bit more. And the only reason why you would put skill sets there that would be beneficial is because of the keywords that's triggering kind of like the match and the ATS to your resume, et cetera. You might see the very bottom says white fonting. Do not do it. Okay. So some people you might have seen on social media are like, oh yeah, I just put like in white font and very small, like just the job rec, copy and paste it. Don't do it. ATS have that capability where they're like, okay, this is somewhat like fraudulent or whatever you want to call it, right? And it's just also not ethically like moral, so don't do it, okay? But if you want to capture those keywords and stuff, I would suggest putting it back into the job description and not in a separate section, okay? You may also notice, let me kind of flip back and forth here. My margins are super narrow. Okay. I also kind of cut it a little bit, right? But my margins are like 0.5. Okay. That is okay. Okay. I see margins that are like 1 inch top and bottom. Getting to 2 pages when you have over 10 years of experience can get pretty tough. Okay. So it is okay to get, pretty tight on the margins as well. Okay. Cool. Any questions before we transition to the interview section of it? So that was kind of like the wrap up of the resume section. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, hi.
So if you have, let's say like you worked at a company and you had multiple different roles there, or you started in a more associate role and got promoted, how
Yeah.
would you kind of recommend grouping those together?
Yeah, so I've seen it done in different ways. If you look at what I've done here, right, I put it all under one company, right? So I put it under Procter and Gamble. I worked there for 10 years. I only put in the last 3 roles. I had like 6 or 7 roles, right? But as you can see, I put it under each one of them, right? I just kind of added like a bullet point for each. That is cool, right? Other ways of doing it is if you look at my Google one, this one actually kind of bleeds over, but it says Google. I was a Japan and Korea country head. It had its own bullet points, and then I went to head of industry. It had its own bullet points, right? So either way works. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, and so then like for your Google one, or I guess for either of them, you really only put the dates that you were at that company, not the dates that you were in either of those roles.
You can do either. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't fully. I'm just trying to like minimize the number because it's already pretty tight. I don't
Hmm.
want like number overload kind of thing. But yeah, you can do either.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Uh, Caroline? Is it Caroline?
Yes, hi. Thank you for sharing that. I just have a quick question. So basically, my title was like a technology project manager, but in reality, I've done a lot of like product manager role um, for that particular job. And sometimes I wish they really changed the title for me, but they didn't. So I'm kind of like not sure what I should put there for my resume.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Sorry, it was kind of hard to hear, but basically you're asking like, hey, like you were doing this and it was like the title was like more or less agreed upon versus the actual title, which they never changed, right? And so I would say this one's kind of like up to like your comfort level, right? The reason why I say that is because most companies will do a background check, and the background check will come with the title, right? So if you have a inflated title or a different title, it could cause a little bit of confusion for the hiring committee. Um, but you can always say it in the interview, like, hey, or after the interview or whatever you want, like whatever come through. When they do a background check, they're like, hey, FYI, this role, I was this title in the system. It was also called this, right? So just so that they know, up to you however comfortable you feel doing that proactively or reactively.
Thank you.
Yeah. In the spirit of time, can we continue and then we'll answer the questions at the end? Okay. Cool. So now let's transition to the interview portion. Okay. So the interview portion, especially in tech, usually there are these stages. Okay. First, it's the ATS. Like I said, over 90+% of applications, resumes get weeded out. Then the recruiter will get it. And then let's say that person gets maybe 10 up to 30, right? They weed those down to the hiring manager interview, which is maybe 5. Okay. And then out of those 5, the hiring manager will probably just pick 2 to 3 to interview, and that's it. Okay. So you go from like, let's say 100 all the way to 2 to 3. Okay. And so if you have a referral, though, you actually bypass the ATS, right? And it goes usually straight to the recruiter, right? Or into the hiring manager. So you'll hear me say this later. Warm leads, a referral, much higher likelihood, okay, of getting to the obviously the interview stage versus the ATS, like cold application. Okay, you have to do it, but know that your success rate will be probably a little bit lower. Okay, and really the whole interview process is really kind of this dance, right, between both parties to understand this function and technical skill set and culture fit. Okay, and so the interview, a lot of it tends to be more behavioral, right? Kind of like assessing your past behaviors and experiences, kind of being a key indicator, predictor for future performance. But they're also evaluating like your soft skills, your teamwork, leadership potential, right? And like I mentioned, culture fit. Okay. Um, like I demonstrated or shared before, the STAR method not only works on your resume, but it most definitely needs to be present during the interview. Okay, the interviewer is going to take notes. Okay, and then afterwards they're going to look at your answers with the other panelists and have a debrief, right? And the more quantifiable, the easier you can help them type the answers in the STAR format, the better. Okay, because they're going to have a discussion on like, what was the situation? Great. What did the candidate do? Great. What were the results? Boom. Okay. So you want to make it as easy for them to listen and also to type your answers. Okay. At the end of the day, like I said, it doesn't matter if your answer delivered $5, right, versus the other one delivered like $5 million. Okay. It is who answered this question the best, right? Because this question is really trying to identify those types of skill sets, that type of fit that they're looking for. Okay. So you may not have direct relevant experience, but if those skill sets and experiences can kind of correlate, right, and also transfer over so that the hiring manager and the panelists can be like, I can see this working even here, right? The thought process, the approach, etc. That's what you want to be able to demonstrate. Okay. It doesn't hurt to think out loud. Okay. A lot of times they'll ask you like, what would you do in this situation, etc. I tend to focus on frameworks. Okay. But thinking out loud actually is a thing in tech where they want to see, are you connecting the dots in a logical way that we can understand that we actually would connect similar dots? It may not be the right answer, it might not lead you to the right answer, but at least we can see the wheels turning. It makes sense that we're also would be on the same page, kind of thing, right? Cool. So when it comes to the types of questions, right, it's usually in these, call it 5 to 6 buckets. Okay. And I've actually observed it's not just in tech, it's across many different industries. Okay. Leadership, right? This isn't just leading others, managing others. It can also be leading or influencing without any sort of authority. Okay. So that you have a peer, you have another stakeholder who doesn't report into you or it's into your like line of reporting. How are you influencing them? Right. That is a sign, that is a skill set of leadership. Okay. Also kind of ties into collaboration. Okay. Collaboration isn't just like, oh, I work in groups. It is sometimes I've worked with very difficult people who don't see eye to eye to me, right, or with me. What did you do, right? What was the outcome of the project, etc. Okay. Problem solving, right? This is really about the strategic thinking, really coming down to the why, right? Why did you do this? Why did you think this was the right approach, etc. And then depending on which function you're applying for, right, role specific skills, right, either through sales, marketing, etc. Have some examples there. Product knowledge, if you're applying for this company, product or service, right? If they're a service company, if they're a product company, know what they do, know how they make money, right? Who are their competitors, et cetera. And then, I don't know, kind of more strategic, higher levels, like the company values and mission. How does it align with your own value, mission, and goals? Okay. So a little trick here is I would actually, and I've done this myself, I would actually put and kind of fill out this grid, okay, of some examples, just maybe one or two examples for each of the key buckets, okay, in the star formats. This will help you tremendously when you're practicing, when you are answering, right? Because it forces you to be very articulate on the star for each of the different components of the interview, like buckets. Okay. You'll notice that sometimes your answer may fit into others, right? Which is totally okay. And you can actually repeat your answer to different kind of interviewers. They're not going to be like, oh, this candidate's used the same example with you as for me. You won't get dinged for that. Okay. And if you use it for every single one of them, right, then potentially they might come up, but again, it won't ding you. I don't, as much as like you would think, if at all, right? It's just like, okay, this person demonstrated, right, and maybe emphasized different things with that example, right? And that's okay. Okay. But I find this grid to be very helpful. Okay. I've used it many times. So definitely try this out. Okay. For whatever company, whatever role you're applying for. Okay. Another tool that you can use if folks have either a ChatGPT, a Google Gemini, etc., there's actually role plays you can do. Okay, and if you have the more paid premium version, you can have voice interaction as well. Let me just demonstrate really quickly for like a few seconds what this could look like to help you. Okay, role play this.
Hey, so guess what? I've got a huge interview coming up, and I really would love your help preparing for it.
That's fantastic news. I'd be thrilled to help you get ready. What's the interview for, and how can we start preparing?
It's a software engineering role, and I was thinking you could do kind of a rapid fire mock interview, maybe ask me 3 questions, and at the end, you can give me some feedback.
Great idea. Let's dive straight in. First question. Can you tell me about a challenging technical
So you get the idea. And actually,
problem?
Hey, so
oh, I'm good. So actually, you can actually upload the job rec at the same time, and then say like, hey, let's role play. You're this recruiter. This is the role that I'm applying for. Boom, right? And so that gives it even more context. Okay. Wanted to go through this framework really quickly, and then kind of close it out with a couple of like other tips and tricks. Okay. When I do career and like executive coaching, one of the things that people ask me about is like how to find like the happy kind of like role or medium or whatever, right? And it's really, I tend to leverage this framework. It's kind of like a version of the Ikigai framework. It's from Jim Collins' Hedgehog framework, From Good to Great, if folks have read that book. But ideally, it is finding your strengths, really understanding like what are you good at, finding and understanding what are your extrinsic motivators and your intrinsic motivators. Okay, so it could be like, I'm good at sales, I'm good at managing others. Extrinsic motivators, I like money, title, promotions, whatever. Intrinsic motivators, I like to train, develop others, right? Kind of leave a legacy, etc. Right? Cool. Then you start to answer and understand these are the types of companies I want to apply for. These are the types of roles. These are the type of people that I want to be with, etc. Okay. I think this is a really important set that many people don't do until they're kind of like in a crappy situation. They're like, oh crap, I just realized I don't like any of this. I'm doing things I don't like, right? I would highly suggest to take a few minutes to answer these questions and do this so that kind of gives you more clarity on the companies you want to apply to, the roles you want to go for, etc. Okay. And again, through coaching, we can go through this a lot more detail, but at a high level, this is the framework. Okay. A couple of other things, and then we'll jump into the bonus kind of section here, right? This is kind of like a catch-all like dump slide here, okay, of everything else. We all have dream companies, right, that we want to work for and stuff, right? I would say keep your dream company list short, right, roughly 5 max, right? And these are the companies that you do a lot of research, right? You follow them on LinkedIn, right? You connect with the people, right? You read news about them, et cetera. And then ideally you network, so then hopefully you get like a referral, et cetera, okay? Because referrals have a much higher chance than just kind of like cold like outreach applications and stuff. You have to do it, okay? Especially in today's economy where the hiring kind of seen as is a bit like competitive and like not super like healthy. You have to do it, right? It's a numbers game. Now there is a way to outreach that gets a little bit more success than just blindly outreaching people on LinkedIn, okay, or through their email, okay? I tend to follow this framework on the right-hand side, okay? So essentially the framework, and you can kind of read through it here, is it's a bit of an intro, right? Who you are, and then immediately talking about, hey, I've done some research. I would love to, and I see this opportunity, right, that I believe I would kind of add value to, that I can address, for you and your company and your peers. Can we set up some time for me to discuss it, right? And I've received several, like many different types of like outbounds, right? I guess is what they would call it, outreaches. And the ones that do this framework pique my attention a lot more versus other ones are like, hey, Albert, can we set up time? I'm interested in this role. I don't really respond to those, right? So this is something, again, it's very human nature. You've done some research, you see an opportunity that maybe I don't see, you want to talk about it. I'm more open to listen than just say, hey, can we coffee chats and just brain dump or whatever comes to our minds kind of thing, okay? Going back to the bullet points here, okay? So the 5th bullet point is around cover letters. Don't spend too much energy on cover letters, okay? I'm not saying don't do them, right? Just out of the 20 years of looking at resumes and everything, I've only had a handful of cover letters come to my desk, okay? I'm hiring a role right now, okay? And if you're interested in learning more, you can go to my LinkedIn and there's some information there about the role. I've seen 0 cover letters, right? I've had like 30 or 40 applicants. 0 cover letters have gone through my desk, right? Now, I'm saying like they didn't create cover letters, they probably did, just my recruiter did not pass that on to me, okay? So don't spend too much energy on the cover letters because they don't go very far, okay? And if you do, you can use the same framework on the right, which is intro, value add, ask, and close, okay? Send a personalized thank you email or a handwritten note. When I'm on site and I'm doing my interview and I'm the interviewee, I will sit in the lobby. I will write a thank you note on like an actual like thank you card. I'll give it to the lobby security person, and then they will give it to the hiring managers. Okay, that differentiates me. Okay, even just writing a thank you email, right? Very few people do that after the interview, right? They may not give you their email, but the recruiter will pass it on, right? So definitely do that, okay? Connect with people on LinkedIn. If you don't get the job, right, don't take it personally, right? Continue to follow up, right? When I interviewed for Google, for P&G, for Meta, like all the roles I've interviewed for these big companies, I never got it off on my first interview, right? Even my second or third interviews for some of them, right? But I kept in touch. When they had an opportunity, they thought of me, they reached back out, or I reached out for them to kind of push me through the system again, right? So keep that relationship warm, okay? Another bonus, or I guess bonus tip number 1, LinkedIn, okay? This is a very valuable channel, okay? So please use this, okay? You might notice a couple of key points here that I want to highlight, right, that make your LinkedIn stand out. I actually paid someone to learn like what are some like good LinkedIn like strategies and stuff like that. So I'm kind of share that with you. Okay, first is Strong visuals, okay? Headshot, super clean. I'm not wearing sunglasses with my dog or anything like that, right? It is me, professional, close up, right? The cover photo, right? It isn't just a random like wallpaper design, right? Like it clearly articulates what I can help do and add value. Okay. That is the first thing people see, right? Is that top part. Okay. So don't waste it. Okay. So you can do this through either like is it like Canvas, right? Or like Power or like Photoshop or whatever, right? Something simple, super easy. Okay. I say get LinkedIn Premium, right? Especially if you're like doing a lot of outreaches and stuff. Otherwise, you just won't have enough messaging credits, right? So definitely do that. Um, the About section. This one, blow it out. Okay, this isn't like a 7-second resume look, right? This is where you can spend a lot of time to talk a lot about you. Okay, and when you see more, mine's very long. Okay, spend a lot of time here. Okay, really talking about your accomplishments and everything. Okay. List your top skill sets. Okay, this actually does trigger to the hiring managers what you're looking for. Okay, and what the good fits are. Okay. Also, by the way, the little button here says open to, right? Make sure that one shows that you are open to job opportunities. Doesn't have to mean that you click like I'm actively searching right now, because that one will trigger like this banner, I think, right? So you can just trigger where it's like, hey, I'm just like passively looking, whatever. So like my hiring manager doesn't know, kind of thing. I highly recommend people interview at least once a year, just because you want to kind of continue to keep that skill set sharp and see what else is out there, right? See what your true value is. Okay. Be very active on LinkedIn, post, comment, like, message, etc. Okay, to show your point of view of something. Okay, and then again, follow your dream companies, right? Comment on those and stuff like that. Okay. One last slide, and then I'll open it for Q&A. Okay. I mentioned before there's an opportunity for a personalized resume analysis, right? Since all of you are on Leland, if you want to schedule a free session, you can. There, we can talk about whatever career questions you might have, but at the same time, many people just give me their resume and I help analyze and give them comments and like real-time feedback on it. So we can definitely do that as well. Okay. But hopefully you can find me. It says Albert C, but Albert Chan or whatever, right? And again, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do that. This is my profile, right? And again, if you're interested in the role that I'm hiring for right now, you can see in one of my previous posts, I think like last week or so, there's a little bit more information about that role. Okay. So with that, any questions? You can go to the chat as well. I think there were some questions. If I'm a new grad, so this is Jackie. If I'm a new grad, I should keep within 1 page max. Correct. If you have under 10 years of experience, 1 page max. Okay. What else? What other questions do folks have?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If I only work somewhere for like 2 or 3 months and then it wasn't a good fit, I normally just exclude it from the resume. But then there's like a 4-month gap and I just don't like put anything because, whatever. But do you advise against that?
It's personal preference, right? If you believe that that role can demonstrate like additional like experiences or skill sets and stuff, I would totally put it on there. I personally put everything on there, right? Just because I think any and every experience adds up. I think over time, if that experience becomes a little bit further down the road, then maybe not so much. But if it's relatively recent, I totally think it's okay to add that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. What else? What other questions do folks have? Oh, sorry. I'm seeing like these chats float, but they're not staying. Okay. Are gap years questionable or suspicious to interviewers? Not really. I mean, I think it does maybe pop up if someone brings it up, but for the most part, people don't like spend, again, like the 7-8 seconds, right, like looking through and like doing the math and whatever, right? They're really looking at the jobs, the experiences, etc. Okay, so definitely focus on that. And if it does come up, I would just have an answer for it, but I don't see it dinging you for at least getting an interview if everything else is solid. Okay. Should we add hobbies? References section to the resume. I say no. References, they will ask for it when you're further down in the interview process, right? There's a separate section and process for that. It is not necessary on the resume at the very beginning, right? Because again, the resume just gets your foot into the door. Okay, they're not going to spend extra time asking for references until you're really like the candidate. Okay, so doesn't really matter. Hobbies, really up to you, right? I added my like stuff that I do outside of work, like speaking engagements, etc., in the very top section and the very bottom, right? But I don't talk about like I love to play tennis and whatever, right? Like I don't add any of that because it doesn't really add too much value. You can maybe add it into your LinkedIn, but maybe on the resume, maybe tone it down a little for that. Okay. Jennifer, I recently moved to the US and I have employment authorization, but I have not had any answer. So I would say LinkedIn applications, and if anyone works at LinkedIn, I don't want to offend you, but LinkedIn roles don't lead very far. Okay. Like I would use LinkedIn as a place, as kind of like a marketplace of all the roles available, but you can also find that through Indeed, through Google search, etc. And then go straight to that page and apply there. Okay. LinkedIn, for some reason, and if you read like the blogs and the Reddits of the worlds, right, like it doesn't lead, like their success rate is very, very low. Okay. So go to the page. Okay. And then I was contacted by a recruiter that I prefer citizens. That one I don't know. I mean, as long as you're authorized there and the company doesn't have to down the road be kind of like your visa kind of like supporter or whatever sponsor, then you're fine. But I know like you may have authorization for now, but down the road you may need like a sponsor. That's when companies are like, I don't know about that. So that may be the reason why, Jennifer. I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Caroline, so I have a gap year. I spent time continuing education through taking online courses, certifications. Should I mention them? 100%. Right. It's like if you're improving yourself, especially like self-directed learning proactively, definitely include it. Shows a lot of drive, etc. But of course, showing some sort of application of that is maybe even more important. Okay, so yeah, so I did this, but then I started my own business or my own like agency, small, but I started something and I applied what I learned. That will take it one step further. Okay, Caroline. Whose referral would be more impactful? Okay, so great question. The referral that's most impactful is not the most senior person, right? It's the person that knows you the best. Okay, so they will ask the referral person, how long do you know this person? Do you know this person's work directly, right, etc. And so having that person work with you for years, know intimately what you've done, even though that person's only like an associate or an individual contributor versus like a VP who you just met at dinner, this person is going to have a lot more weight on the referral than this VP does. Okay, surprisingly. Okay. What if using a single page doesn't work for a 3-year experience? I'm not able to concise in a single page. Any tips? I will say you have to be very choiceful. Again, it is not a your life story. It is to get your foot in the door. So pick your favorite child, right? Pick your favorite bullet points and include those only. Everything else, take out. I've actually seen Here's another tip. I was chatting with someone in one of the previous classes, creating a website, okay, that you can link on your resume, okay, for if they want to see actual visuals and other additional details, include that there, okay. But on your resume, 3 years of experience, 1 page. If you go over 1 page, people will start to like question like how articulate are you, right? Again, going back to communication skills, this is something that's really important. And so make sure that you try to follow this as best you can. Okay. But the additional site is important. Or it's not important, but it's a nice like differentiator. Okay. I've seen a position at Meta that I'm interested in, so I messaged the person who posted it and didn't hear anything back. I did apply to the website. So you can, sorry, the person who is hiring cannot show like preferential treatment. That's probably why they are not allowed to speak to you if they posted it. Because that would give you a competitive advantage over others who did not reach out. Okay, that's probably why. So even if you reached out again, just from a policy standpoint, not just at Meta, but many companies, they're probably not allowed to engage with you, without like HR's approval or something. Okay. Cool. Those are all the chat questions. What other questions do folks have? Jaden?
Hi, Albert. First off, thanks so much for hosting this tonight. Yeah, I just have a super quick question. I'm not sure if you know too much about it, but I'm basically just looking for product designer roles. I've had previous experience working on my startups and at Disney already. So I kind of know how the internal company works. I was wondering if you have let's say for product design, I know for the resume, usually I would have both an ATS friendly resume and then also my normal design resume that I have on my portfolio.
Yeah.
Would you recommend just applying with a normal ATS resume through the websites and stuff like that, just so just get through the ATS and then presenting a more formal
Yeah.
resume later on the interview process?
100%. Yep. Once you get the recruiter email, be like, hey, Jaden would love to set up some time, right? Either virtually or in person. That's when you're like, great, here's my resume, right? For your reference again, or whatever, right? And that's a pretty one. Yeah. Yeah. Because
Awesome. Thank you.
You don't want to confuse. So even when the person is referring you, if I get one of those resumes that is not ATS friendly, it actually makes it harder for me because I actually have to fill in the blanks and the referral. So I clearly can see okay, these things did not pick up, which is a pain. So then I have to fill it out by looking at the resume and stuff. So yeah, make it as ATS friendly as possible.
For sure. Thank you.
Cool. What other questions?
I have a question about the LinkedIn thing. So is the strategy for I work remotely, but if I'm wanting to build a relationship with someone and eventually have a referral, is the strategy to do, I think you called it I forget what you called it, but you have a little template of what to say and reach out to them and kind of express this is your value add. Is there anything else that you would add to that process? Normally I try to relate back to the experience and the position and not make it I don't really know how to phrase it, but is there anything else you would add to that process to make it more successful to be able to have a referral in the future?
Yeah. So one is I would probably reach out to folks when there isn't a role that's out there that you're interested in, right? So that you're clearly wanting to connect so that you can learn more about that company. And you can tell them hey, I do have aspirations to work for your company down the road. Would love to just kind of build my network and understand. And if we have time for coffee, even better kind of thing, right? But yeah, you're really just trying to like learn and build your network, and then share some things that maybe that you came across, either like an article or something, right? Or some sort of research, right? That they might find valuable. And then you start asking for the thing, maybe like a few kind of iterations back and forth later.
Right, because I didn't want to seem like I'm only connecting with this person because I want something, and so I've kind of sent a message of just like wanting to connect and share like industry insights or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, because at the end of the day, like most of us probably don't like to be like sold to, right? Or feel like we're definitely being like car salesman sold to, right? But if it's like building a relationship, if there's some value exchange, etc., then yeah.
Okay, thanks, Albert.
Yeah, totally. Is there a website? So there are ATS websites out there, but there's actually one website that's really good that I was not allowed to put on here. Leland told me that I couldn't because it takes them out of Leland. But the website is called VMock, VMOCK.com. I have the paid version of it because I got it through business school. But VMock analyzes your resume. I think it analyzes maybe like your LinkedIn profile as well. It caught things that I didn't even notice. And it gives you like a grade. It says like, these are things you need to improve. And then you do it and it's like, oh, your grade went from like a B 86 to like a 92 or whatever, right? But here's still some opportunities, right? So you can keep going back and forth with it. So VMock is one that I highly recommend. And I would have shown it today, but unfortunately I could not. Sorry, more questions in the chat. Of order management supply experience, I pursued a master's in building my profile. Okay, should I prepare my resume as a fresher with zero experience? No, I would definitely include that. Again, like I think all experience is any and all experience is better than no experience. Okay. The transition, yeah, it can be very difficult. I totally understand. But some of it, one is probably just the economy right now, like the hiring situation, right? But then two, again, they're probably looking for some sort of real life application of some sort, right? And if you can demonstrate there is some sort of like transferable skill sets of what you've done before to what you're applying for, awesome. But I personally like to see experience versus just academics, on people's resumes. Okay. Let me stop sharing my screen just so I can see everyone a little bit better. So what else? What other questions? I know we have a few more minutes left. In the profile about me section on my CV, how personal versus technical should I be? Dermis, I don't know what you mean by personal. Can you maybe come off mute or type out what you mean by personal? If not, I would say maybe changing the word to professional versus personal, right? Like, I don't need to tell people I have like 2 kids, right, and a cat kind of thing, right? But I enjoy speaking engagements, right? Kind of reading about industry news, whatever, right? Like that stuff is totally okay. Okay. Should I focus on my technical skills and experiences? Yeah. Yes. The bottom, all of those things. Yes. Technical skills, experiences, your values, everything. Yes. Include those. Cool. What else? Well, great. Well, hopefully this was helpful. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Jaden, do you have-
last one, Albert. Any tips on kind of like how to stand out as like an interviewee when you're up against like 100 different candidates?
Yeah. So one, I would say to stand out, being articulate, right, is key, right? So the STAR method, the CAR method, rambling has hurt a lot of people that I've interviewed, on the other side. I've been told I ramble at times when questions are like I haven't thought of or whatever, and I have to think on my feet. Sometimes I ramble. So not being articulate is going to hurt you. Okay. I think asking smart questions also stands out. Okay, because you're gonna have time to ask questions, right? If you're just gonna sit there or ask like very basic questions that you can find on Google, that's not a good thing. Okay, ask smart questions. Okay, things that you can't find. Okay, that demonstrates curiosity. I think the asking for the role, especially if you're doing a sales role or some sort of commercial role, like asking for it, closing them, right, is key. Okay. Versus just kind of leaving it up in the air, right? Tell them why you're a good fit again, right? Re-emphasize that, right? Show them that you are hungry, you're passionate, etc. That goes a long way. Okay. And then I think just a cherry on top, the thank you notes, right? Just again, show appreciation or respect. If you're on site, right, obviously be respectful to even the people at the lobby, right, kind of thing, right? Like again, they're trying to see like cultural fit, right? And then you're not just like a brown noser to the boss, right? So I think those things are, I would say, like just human common sense, but a lot of people don't think about that because they're so nervous and stressed, for the interview. Okay. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much again for everyone taking the time, especially if anyone's on like, very, very, very different time zone than mine out here. It was definitely a pleasure. I will send out the deck to everyone afterwards. And hopefully, if you need any additional help or resources, find me on LinkedIn, find me on Leland. Happy to help you wherever I can. And you'll probably get asked for a little feedback review or whatever. Hopefully I can, count on you for that. I'm trying to build my brand on Leland. So that would be a very, very helpful thing for me. Okay. I'll stay on. Sounds like Michelle has a question, but if anyone else wants to jump, feel free to. Okay. Have a good night. Okay. Michelle.
Sorry, that was an accident.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was like a wave goodbye or something. Okay. Well, I'll see everyone.